Well folks, it looks like dragon season is over, at least until next year, when we find out the release date for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. House of the Dragon Season 2 has left fans polarized, but it has also made a few things very clear. The players have been moved around on the painted table, the armies are on the march, and war is coming to Westeros. So how will this war look? Who will do what and why? We'll look at all that and more in this video. These are our House of the Dragon Season 3 predictions explored. And spoiler warning before you go any further, because there will be a lot of those in this video. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
I am trying to help you.
Corus makes amends. The Sea Snake's arc, since the beginning of House of the Dragon, has been about his hubris battling his honor. Corlys Velaryon is not a bad man. It's just that his ambition is so great, he sometimes forgets what being a good man feels like. He reached for the sun and got burnt, hard, losing both of his children, partial movement in his leg, and now his wife as well. It makes sense that in his time of loss, he would turn to the only real family he has left. But then so does Alan's rage. In Fire and Blood, as soon as Adam and Alan come forward and the former claims a dragon, Corlys has them both legitimized. There, the lineage of the boys is contested, but it's clear that the Sea Snake is desperate for a new heir. His problems are put to rest when Alan and Adam come forward, and it seems like the sowing is the first time both sides make contact with each other, given how quickly things progress. In the show, Corlys has always known about his bastards, walked past them with his true-born children, never acknowledged who they were until he lost his own. Now he's trying to help them, but he knows he's probably too late. In the finale, Corlys tells Alan he's dismissed twice, and if it was another man spewing forth such a tirade at their liege lord, and the hand of the queen besides, they'd have immediately been arrested for disobeying orders. But Corlys knows that Alan's pain is justified, so he lets him say his piece before they sail for war. With Rhaenys' death, Corlys realizes that all he's done in his life has been for his own glory. He wanted the Velaryon name to be tied to the Iron Throne so badly, he ignored the illegitimacy of Rhaenyra's children and named Luke his heir, knowing Jace would someday sit the Iron Throne. When the Triarchy started wreaking havoc in the Stepstones, Corlys launched a private war alongside Damon to secure trading lanes that his ships frequent the most. The only thing he ever did for anyone else was when he built High Tide from the riches of his 9 voyages. And he did it to prove his love for Rhaenys. Corlys doesn't know how to confront things very well. When Laena and Laenor died, he ran away to the Stepstones and nearly got himself killed, abandoning his wife and paying mind to his own grief. But now that she's gone, he sees his mistakes, and will be making all the moves he can to correct them. Earlier, he was against naming Baela or Rhaena heir to Driftmark on account of their sex. However, once Rhaenys died, and he saw her in his granddaughter, he realized she was right and offered Baela Driftmark immediately. He was rejected, which is another important check for his massive ego. But now he's been put on the right path. Alan and Adam are both older than Laena and Laenor. They're both far better fits for the Velaryon legacy, having been of the salt and the sea since the beginning. Corlys has renamed his ship from the Sea Snake to the Queen Who Never Was, because from this point forward, his life will be about honoring the legacy of his wife. Rhaenys told him to name Baela his heir, and he tried that, but she has plans of her own, and he doesn't want to get in the way of that. Rhaenys also told him that she knows who Adam and Alan are, and that they should be given places of honor at court instead of being hidden away at shipyards. We suspect he'll do just that, once Rhaenyra and her forces secure King's Landing. Right now, Alan, Adam, and Corlys are all geared up for war. Adam is preparing to fly sea smoke to battle, while his brother and father prepare the oars of the Queen Who Never Was. The Battle of the Gullet should make the Sea Snake realize the true fragility of life and the essence of time. In the books, the Blacks managed to eke out a technical victory, but their losses are so great that Corlys says, "If this be victory, I pray I never win another." There's nothing like the threat to one's life and their families to have them get started on making amends, and we suspect Corlys will apologize to his sons after pulling an Alan on Alan. Once they prove themselves to the Queen, Driftmark will have a true heir of salt and sea in Alan Velaryon, for Rhaenyra should have no problem legitimizing people that can prove their lineage, and have been instrumental to her war effort. As for her other dragon riders, we will get to them in a moment, but now that we've shown you Corlys' path to redemption, let's look at Aemon's path of destruction. Aemon's dam finally breaks. Aemon has probably had the quickest rise to, and fall from, power for a Targaryen prince. He pulled a sneaky and got his throne after burning Aegon in the heat of battle. But within 4 episodes, he's managed to isolate not just his allies, but also his family. Aemon never wanted to give control of the war effort to anyone that wasn't him. Even when he was plotting with Criston Cole, it was clear that he was in charge of the execution of their plans. And once he became regent, he effectively banished all of his counselors from the small council. Aemon must have thought that he could win the war himself, given given that he was the rider of the largest dragon in the world. But when he saw what Rhaenyra had done with Vermithor, Silverwing, and Seasmoke, for the first time in a long time, he felt fear again. When Aemond gets scared, he gets angry, and when he's angry, he burns things. He reduced Sharp Point to ash and bone and blood just to blow off some steam and show Rhaenyra that he was not intimidated. He tried to force Helaena to ride Dreamfire to battle with him, and it took her prophecy to scare him off. Aemond already thinks little of Aegon, and he thinks even less of Alicent, and his grandfather is still not in the capital, helping him win this damn war he started decades ago. So what does a one-eyed prince who's feeling abandoned by his allies and his family members do? He starts burning things, of course. Alicent told us that Aemond was going to be on his way to Harrenhal soon, and waiting in the bowels of Black Heron's folly is the object of his ire. Criston Cole. Aemond knows Cole has been sleeping with his mother, or at least it seems like it. Gwaine Hightower and their whole army surely knows, now that he's brought it out in the open by confronting Criston about sleeping with his sister so dramatically. Once Aemond reaches Harrenhal, he will learn about his mother's betrayal, and what he does after that will be terrifying to say the very least. Aemond already suspects Larys' loyalty. He let his castle get taken too easily, and he couldn't deliver Otto to him in time. Once he learns that Simon Strong actually did betray him, well, let's just say Aegon's rat catchers will look like a joke in front of what he does to the Strongs. Aemond has only one setting in his mind when he gets enraged, and that is to go for revenge. Fire and Blood tells us that once he and Cole reach Harrenhal, they disagree on strategy. Cole thinks they should link up with the Hightower army whilst defeating any other enemies on their way, but Aemond wants to go straight for King's Landing and Damon. We hate to say it, but for once, Cole's plan was the right one. Even though he and Aemond had a few thousand men under their command at best, they had the largest dragon as well, and Vhagar could have made the lives of the mainland Black armies a living hell. If he joined up with Tessarion and the 20,000 soldiers in Ormond's Hightower army, that would create a force dominant enough to actually make a difference in a battle for King's Landing, despite the Black's dragon advantage too. But no, Aemond wants to burn things, so he'll do that instead, starting with Harrenhal. That Aegon the Conqueror show might be a ways ahead in the future, but Aemond and Vhagar will be stand-ins for him and Balerion in the second burning of Harrenhal by Dragonflame. Aemond's attack on Sharp Point might have been an impulse decision, but its impact was what he intended it to be. If you can't make your enemies join you, then keep burning their holdings over and over again until their spirit finally breaks. The Targaryens attempted this in Dorne unsuccessfully, but before that, the Valerians found great success with this strategy in the Giscari Wars and the Spice Wars. Since his closest target is the Riverlands, Aemond and Vhagar might just set out on a terror campaign in the Trident, in an attempt to force Rhaenyra to send Damon after him. Both sides know that he's the only man experienced enough to deal with Vhagar. While we wouldn't hold our breaths over their fight happening next season itself, the build-up will definitely begin, and be more entertaining than what we got this season. If screaming people are your idea of entertainment, that is. Rhaena learns that chasing dragons is a blessing and a curse. In episode 7, Rhaena Targaryen made the bold decision to chase after the dragon in the Vale, and turns out it was impulsive. She doesn't have any food or water on her. She's barely armed or prepared to sleep out in the open. Rhaena is just going off instinct, and that's a great adventure for a young girl, but a grievous sign of irresponsibility in a royal princess. Rhaena's time in the Vale has been marked by her projecting her deep dislike for her mission onto others. She hates the fact that she's been sent off to be a nurse to babes, while her sister fights in the war, and it's already made her mistreat the person she's supposed to be showing all the courtesy in the world to. Rhaena's job in the Vale was to remind Lady Jane of her pledge, get an army down to Rhaenyra, leave Joffrey to protect the Eyrie, and then take Aegon and Viserys across the Narrow Sea to Pentos for their safety. We understand that she's had a difficult and traumatic childhood, but Rhaena is also full of herself. She's focusing on her emotions, her needs, instead of putting her house first, which is imperative in times of war. Her impulse decision to chase Sheepstealer paid off, because she found him in the end. But what happens now? Showrunner Ryan Condal has carefully tiptoed around the question of whether Rhaena will bond with Sheepstealer, and if Nettles is even in the show, by asking people to stay tuned. In the post-finale press conference, he said that they'd done a lot of legwork to set up Rhaena as a wartime parallel to young Aemond, and now she's willing to go to dangerous lengths to become a dragon rider. He's pretty much said that the show is working with its own interpretation of the three sources from Fire and Blood, so it's likely that Rhaena and Sheepstealer will end up bonding. But if you're not convinced, let's look at it by process of elimination. In Season 1, it was announced that there will be 17 dragons animated for the series, where there were 20 in Fire and Blood. Of those, we've already seen 14. Well, 15 with Sheepstealer. So the question now is who takes up those last 2 slots? It looks like the show got rid of the dragons of Aegon's children, Morgul and Shrykos, so we can strike them off the list. We haven't seen Tyraxes yet, so he could be one of those too. He also plays an important role in the climactic sequence of the war, so we think they'll add him on later. That leaves one open spot, and 3 dragons can take it: Grey Ghost, Cannibal, and the one that Rhaena is actually supposed to be bonding with, Morning. While we'd love to see the last two get a nod, they don't really do anything during the war, and Morning only becomes relevant after the war. Grey Ghost still has a role to play, so if he and Tyraxes are the ones that get the final 2 slots, then Sheepstealer will be Raina's dragon. She will be able to fulfill Raina's pledge to Lady Jane after all, and defend the Vale with a large dragon. But in the process, she will end up dooming her half-brothers. Though Gulltown is a long way from Eerie, we don't exactly know how many days Raina has been searching for Sheepstealer. We see her sleeping once, so at least a day has to have passed. But she's also starving and thirsty pretty much every time we see her, so it could be several. If Aegon and Viserys reach Gulltown and board the Gay Abandon as their half-sister abandons them, their lives will be in the hands of strangers of dubious loyalty at best. But that isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the Gay Abandon needs to cross the narrow sea and come close to the Gullet to get to Pentos. And as of this moment, the Triarchy is on its way to break the Valerion blockade. Merchant ships are much slower than warships by default, so if Sharako Lohar's fleet comes across the Gay Abandon, they will find the most precious cargo they could have ever hoped for, the sons and heirs of their enemies. Stormcloud is too small to carry Aegon to safety as he did in the books, so if one brother gets kidnapped, both of them do. And it's then that Raina will realize what she's done in the hubris of her youth. She will gain a dragon, yes, but in doing so, she will have broken her queen's trust and abandoned her sons to a fate worse than death in her mind. Chasing dragons is fun and games, but war is no game, and Raina is about to find out one way or another. But speaking of finding out,
come with me.
Prince Jaceres is about to implode. Battle of the Gullet. You know how you can see someone about to blow their lid from a mile away? Well, we're shocked that Jaceres has even managed to keep his on for this long. With every passing episode, his pouts become tighter and more pronounced, and the prince is doing everything in his power to stay calm. When his mother rejected including him in her war plans, he was miffed, but he understood. He didn't let his zeal get in the way of her plans. But when she started relying on everyone but him, Jace began exhibiting that infamous temper his birth father was famous for. He impulsively flies off to the twins and secures House Frey's support for his mother and the crossing of his Northmen, while promising them a petition for Harrenhal once the war is done. Rhaenyra acknowledges what he did as a good thing, but she sidelines him even harder after that. She makes him a part of her research for the sowing, but ignores telling him that she's expanded the search to include bastards like himself. She ignores his pleas by stating her godly purpose, and now that she has new dragon riders, she immediately prioritizes them over him. Rhaenyra has made Adam her right-hand man for all intents and purposes, flying with him to Harrenhal, making him her representative to the other dragon seeds, and teaching him the most about the art of dragon riding. It was Jace's idea to get Damon back into the fold, and now that she's finally doing it, she takes Adam instead of him. Ulf's provocations haven't helped matters either. If you didn't notice, Jace was the only one not gearing up for battle in that closing montage. This is probably because the show is going to treat the Battle of the Gullet and Rhaenyra's assault on King's Landing as a composite event. Right now, the Valerion fleet is preparing for deployment. Ulf, Hugh, and Adam are doing the same thing, and Rhaenyra has Alicent's word that the city will come to her peacefully. She doesn't need the entire Valerion fleet to accomplish that, just enough of it to deliver a strong host to the capital's shores. She would keep the blockade going in anticipation of a sea attack, and leave Jace and Baela to defend Dragonstone. This half will meet the Triarchy's fleet, and that's when Jace will decide to assert his authority as Crown Prince. In the finale, his future wife urged him to remember his claim and what it means in truth, so as the Targaryen on Dragonstone, he will make an important yet impulsive decision. Jace is the type to say, "Let me handle it, babe," but what will he accomplish against a force that is trained to fight dragons? We guess we'll find out, but one thing is for certain, Jace has shown incredible impulse control so far, and for his sake, we hope he continues to. We all know what happened to his father when he didn't, and Jaceres is feeling like breaking bones of late.
Them! There will be no mercy! We fight for our queen!
Damon the Dutiful, Fall of King's Landing. It's kind of ironic that the man we expected to rebel will be falling in line now. But hey, such is the nature of prophecies, eh? Daemon Targaryen has been reborn in a way, following his experiences at Harrenhal, and he's acknowledged Rhaenyra as his true queen. He's in command of the army of Rivermen right now, and considering Jason Lannister just reached the Red Fork, his first course of action will be sending them westward. Daemon himself will be performing a far greater duty to his wife by flying to join her assault on King's Landing. But it won't be before he settles some scores first. Simon Strong betrayed him by summoning Rhaenyra to Harrenhal, and while Daemon has softened a bit, he won't have forgotten. In Fire and Blood, Cole finds Simon and his household in the dungeons, and while that could be a plan the Blacks come up with, Daemon imprisoning Simon for betraying him to Rhaenyra makes just as much sense. He can't be letting go of all his rogue charm after all. Once he joins up with Rhaenyra, he will become one of her foremost champions, and make suggestions to her that will actually make a lot of sense with the power of foresight. Daemon knows he's destined to die fighting Aemond at Harrenhal, so his job now is to secure his wife's reign as best as he can. Before that happens, he will not fly Caraxes in her name. He will also be giving her advice that sounds crazy at first, but could be a major deterrent against future rebellions. Ulf and Hugh expect knighthood now that they're dragon riders, but that won't be the full extent of their ambition. As they continue to rack up wins for the Blacks, their demands will continue to grow, and already you can see people questioning Targaryen blood and their bond with dragons, considering commoners now ride two of the greatest. Rhaenyra's current tactic is to try to keep them under her thumb with curtsies and feasts, but she's toying with men that she has no idea about. Ulf's behavior at the dinner table alone should have told her that he cannot be trusted without heavy incentives. But Damon, being an experienced war commander, can see such things. He knows that if they don't give these guys enough honor and riches to secure their loyalties now, the Blacks will be in big trouble should they turn their coats. So he'll make two proposals to his queen. It'll feel weird seeing Damon advocate diplomacy in such a way, but he will also express a sentiment that will be shared by Cregan Stark down the line. Damon knows you either break your enemies and bend their knees, or you extinguish their line altogether. He'll advocate this line of offense, and Rhaenyra, having decided her path ahead is going to be paved with fire and blood, will have no problem with it. At least she shouldn't, because she doesn't in the book. Damon will remain dutiful to his wife for the rest of his life, and that will include taking care of his nephew for her. It's too sad that she won't listen to all of his advice, because it will end up causing her to lose what she has gained.
Taming a dragon's thirsty work.
Little birds and big betrayals. Like we mentioned in the last entry, Ulf's behavior at the dinner table alone should have shown the queen that he's unworthy of her trust, and a besotted loudmouth besides. Ulf antagonizes Jace in their first on-screen interaction, and then antagonizes Rhaenyra as well for trying to discipline him. In his and Hugh's defense, they haven't eaten in weeks, so gorging on food that the queen is so graciously providing them is sort of their just due. But the nonchalance with which Ulf keeps asking for quails and demands Rhaenyra knight him before he shows manners is unsettling, as is the fact that he's the only dragon rider that chooses fancy velvets and Targaryen colors for his battle armor. Ulf might be a drunk, but he's not stupid, and he knows how to survive. In his first scene, he was speaking of supporting Rhaenyra's claim, but as soon as Aegon walked into the inn, Ulf was the first to hail him. He was deferring to others when he had no power, but now he has a dragon, and he doesn't even care about showing respect to his beloved nephew Jacaerys Velaryon, whom he was proclaiming as the rightful heir after his mother. Knighthoods are all well and good, but lordships and political power is what truly seals the deal when it comes to keeping new and dangerous allies like Ulf loyal. When Aegon the Conqueror took Westeros, he raised his own lords paramount in 3 of the 6 kingdoms that he initially conquered. These men were fiercely loyal to him, and 2 of them had what the Westerosi call questionable blood. The Tyrells were the stewards of the Gardeners and an Andal house besides. There were many First Men houses with better blood ties to the Oaken seat, but Aegon chose the Tyrells because they yielded peacefully and showed him loyalty. He made his bastard half-brother Orys Baratheon the Lord of Storm's End after House Durrandon died out. There's precedent for people like Hugh and Ulf to rise high in the world, but loyalty is the crucial factor here. Rhaenyra thinks she's given these 2 enough by letting them ride her dragons, but she doesn't understand that to retain them long-term, she'll have to do better than knighthood. Maybe if she named them to her Kingsguard, it would ensure their loyalty, but regular knighthood for a dragon lord is not going to be enough, and Damon Targaryen knows that. Those 2 proposals we mentioned him making will include marriage. First, he'll suggest that Hugh be married to Lady Rosby, and Ulf be married to Lady Stokeworth, as a reward for their participation in the fall of King's Landing. Lacking ruling lords, Ulf and Hugh would effectively take control of those 2 houses, and rise far beyond knighthood, but Rosby and Stokeworth are the closest castles to King's Landing. If she binds them to those 2 houses, she gives lesser men access to dragons, yes, but she also keeps Hugh and Ulf close to her chest. If that doesn't work out, they're not likely to accept prizes smaller than Rosby and Stokeworth, and might even set their sights on one of the great castles of Westeros. Knowing how politics work in Westeros, Rhaenyra should know that if things go that far, she'll have no choice but to end entire lines to make sure dragons don't destroy her. So she has put herself in a very precarious position here. What started as demands for little birds can turn into a big betrayal if she doesn't temper her actions and balance them with societal expectations. Winter Wolves and Butcher's Ball, the Red Wedding of House of the Dragon. The arrival of the Winter Wolves can only mean one thing. We're about to see the most gruesome battle of the dance get adapted during Season 3. What took Game of Thrones from a great fantasy show to an iconic piece of cinema that will endure beyond living memory was the Red Wedding. This episode was unlike any other in television up until that point, because so many main characters died in it that it utterly changed the course of the story. While there will be no Wed Wedding type of betrayal in House of the Dragon, we will be getting reminders of it all along the march of the Winter Wolves, who will be involved in 2 key battles. With Jason Lannister and Criston Cole on the move, Cregan Stark's Greybeards will reinforce their Rivermen allies at the fish feed, and then start using the corpses from it to leave behind grisly street art for Criston's army to find. One of these installations will feature a feast of corpses, where the bodies of green allied soldiers will be arranged in a manner eerily similar to what occurred during the Red Wedding. The Rivermen will deal with Jason while denying Cole's host resources and provisions, and the Winter Wolves will be at the center of it all. Criston Cole is the reason that the dance is happening in the first place. He did what he did out of spite and in the name of love, and now he must pay the price. Once Aemond and Cole go their separate ways, the latter will end up getting caught between 2 armies. If the Rivermen defeat the Lannister army, that is, Aemond's tactics will be turned upon him, and what will ensue will put the Red Wedding to shame. If HBO actually goes through with the level of savagery described in Fire and Blood. In later years, the battle would come to be known as the Butcher's Ball, for the corpse feasts led Cole's army to a ball with death. The Kingmaker already knows he's doomed. He said they marched toward their annihilation in the finale, and he's right. We just don't think he knows how much worse men can be compared to dragons, though he should. Fabian Frankel will be truly missed when he's gone, but hey, at least we get to see Daeron the Daring next season, right? Alicent's only good boy was glimpsed briefly in the finale, flying northward with the Hightower army, and now that both her sons are pretty much by themselves, someone has to keep the fight going. Cole's initial thought was to join up with Daeron and the Hightower army, but alas, the jealousy of brothers is a bitter poison that spreads outside the family as well.
We must leave King's Landing quickly, and we will not return for some time.
Let the Spy Wars begin. Speaking of characters going off on their own, it's time to talk about the man of the hour. Not Aegon, not Aemond, not Damon, and not even Criston. It's Larys Strong. The Clubfoot finally has what he's been working towards the whole season, the undivided trust of a king. And it didn't come easy for him. He had to kidnap his grandfather, lie about his mother and brother, make him endure painstaking physio sessions with Grand Maester Orwyle. But once Aegon had recovered enough, Larys secured his full support by using Aemon's actual attempt at his brother's life to his advantage. He convinces Aegon that they need to escape King's Landing ASAP, and they do, seemingly headed for Braavos, where the Iron Banks hold most of Larys' fortune. With that money, they could raise a fleet of their own and arm it with sellswords, because Harrenhal might be a ruin, but its holdings are vast and keep its overlords rich. If Larys helps Aegon pull a Stannis Baratheon, it could at least help him hold out on his own terms, but that's wasting his resources to him. Right now, every spy within the Red Keep belongs to him, and he has agents of his own all over the city. What if the reason he kept Otto in a black cell wasn't to take him out of the picture, but to use him as a bargaining chip? Larys knows Rhaenyra is coming if she's found a new rider for her dragons. Him leaving the city with Aegon feels permanent, but it could be temporary, considering his actual resources are still in the capital. Larys Strong has the perfect disguise for re-entering the joint as well. His clubfoot will help him pass himself off as a cripple, headed for the Queen's clemency, and that's when the Spy Wars will begin. There's no way that Larys hasn't heard of what Rhaenyra did with the dragon seeds of King's Landing. If he has, like we suspect he has, he'll figure out his assassination attempt at Mysaria must have failed, with her being an important advisor to Rhaenyra. Now that she's saved her life, Larys needs to ensure the Greens have some support of their own within the city, so he can make Aegon's return easier. We expect his agents to run afoul of Mysaria's at some point, and the Battle of the Spy Masters will truly be underway then. But if he plans to use Otto to appease Rhaenyra and sneak his way into her good graces, we wouldn't be surprised by that. Larys is the kind of person to feign loyalty to all but keep his own counsel. Now that he has Rhaenyra's primary target in his possession, let the hunt for the king begin. This also brings us to our final prediction for Season 3, which is Rhaenyra the Cruel. At the beginning of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, the name Rhaenyra the Cruel was nothing more than Hightower propaganda. Otto Hightower had a Septon of the Faith proclaim this name aloud and proud during the funeral procession of his great-grandson Jaehaerys, because he knew that this would turn people against her. Losing a child to a battle between dragons is different from actively seeking to kill one for vengeance. Rhaenyra wasn't capable of even thinking such a thing at the start of Season 2, but by its end, she has clearly changed. When she spoke with Alicent in the Great Sept, she was the one suing for peace, despite knowing that she had no reason to do so. It was Alicent's desire for peace that made Rhaenyra think it was even possible in the first place. But when she refused to admit her mistake, once again, and threw everything on Rhaenyra, once again, the Black Queen decided she could no longer ignore violence. The first thing she wanted to do was find dragon riders to neutralize Vhagar, and her first attempt didn't quite work out. Her second attempt saw many of her volunteers die grisly deaths, but instead of saving them, Rhaenyra forced them to contend with Vermithor to see which one would prove themselves worthy. She was planning to attack King's Landing everything and kill innocents if it came to be, way before Alicent gave her the cleaner option. Rhaenyra was fully intending to unleash 5 grown dragons on King's Landing to force her claim with fire and blood, and the only reason she hasn't is because Alicent finally admits her guilt and agrees to help her friend out. She thinks she's doing the right thing by telling Rhaenyra she will surrender the city to her and take Helaena and Jaehaera and go away. But what Rhaenyra really wants is Aegon's head, and he's long gone. Once Rhaenyra realizes this, all her arrangements for Alicent will be cancelled, and she'll set out on a vicious hunt for the king, with her spy and mistress by her side. The longer Aegon and Aemon stay out of her reach, the more paranoid she will become, until eventually Otto's slanders turn into a self-fulfilling prophecy. Rhaenyra once told Mysaria not to mistake her mercy with pliancy, and her husband just told her warriors that there will be no mercy for their enemies. If Aegon slips through her fingers, and her sons' lives are put at risk because of Rhaena's actions, and then Aemon and Daeron start making progress during their respective campaigns as well, we can see Rhaenyra getting boxed in and becoming desperate enough to really become Rhaenyra the Cruel. House of the Dragon has made Emma Darcy's rendition of the character feel far more capable and promising as a ruler, but when it comes to being a mother, both Rhaenyras are the same. At least her descent to paranoia and madness will make a lot more sense than Daenerys, because right about now she feels pretty whitewashed. But mess with her babies, and she'll find you, and she will kill you. And that's something the Seven Kingdoms are about to find out to their woe. Marvelous verdict. And that's it for our predictions for Season 3. Let us know which storyline you're looking forward to the most. Personally, it's the Larys and Rhaena storylines for us, because those are some of the least explored characters in the books, and the show has done a fantastic job of fleshing them out. But we've taken a lot of your time already, so why don't you let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. We'll see you guys soon, and don't forget, history is written in fire and blood. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.